Officer Michael Torres adjusts his rearview mirror, watching the midnight fog roll across Maple Avenue. The steam from his coffee cup fogs up the patrol car's window, creating a hazy view of the empty streets. He's been on the force for 5 years now, and these late-night shifts still feel like a mix of endless waiting and sudden surprises. His radio crackles to life. Unit 247, check on a noise complaint at Pine Street. He reaches for the radio, but another officer beats him to it. Unit 253 responding. Torres takes another sip of his coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste of the precinct's ancient coffee maker. The shopping plaza looms ahead, its darkened windows reflecting his patrol car's headlights. Most stores closed hours ago, except for the 24-hour pharmacy at the corner. The neon sign flickers, casting intermittent blue and red shadows across the wet pavement. Torres has driven this route countless times, knowing every pothole and crack in the road. His phone buzzes, a text from his sister Elena about their mother's upcoming birthday celebration. He makes a mental note to respond later, knowing she'll understand. Night shift officers live in a different world, one where family gatherings and normal schedules become luxury items. Movement catches his eye. A sleek black Audi emerges from behind the plaza, its high-end wheels gleaming under the streetlights. The car moves smoothly, almost too smoothly for this time of night in this part of town. Torres straightens in his seat, years of training kicking in as he notices the unusual route the vehicle takes. Instead of using the main exit, the Audi weaves through the back lot, passing the loading docks where delivery trucks usually park. His instincts, honed by years of patrol work, tell him something isn't right. The plaza has seen its share of late-night break-ins, and this high-end car seems out of place. Torres flips through his mental checklist. No reports of stolen vehicles matching this description, but the behavior seems suspicious. The car's windows are tinted, making it impossible to see the driver. He notices the license plate, a custom frame with a university alumni logo. His partner, Officer James Chen, had warned him about a series of sophisticated burglaries in the area during their shift changeover. "These aren't your typical smash-and-grab jobs," Chen had said, showing him surveillance footage of well-dressed perpetrators in luxury vehicles. Torres follows at a distance, watching as the Audi makes another unusual turn. The driver seems to know the area well, taking back routes that most locals ignore. He clicks his computer terminal, running the plates while maintaining visual contact. The system churns slowly. Budget cuts mean they're still using outdated equipment. The fog thickens, creating halos around the streetlights. Torres debates calling for backup but hesitates. He's been criticized before for being too cautious, and the surgeon's words echo in his mind. Trust your instincts, but make sure they're not clouded by assumptions. The Audi suddenly signals, pulling into an empty parking lot. Torres sees his opportunity. He flips on his lights, keeping the siren silent in the quiet night. The car comes to a smooth stop, no hesitation or attempted evasion. Something about the driver's confidence makes him pause. As he radios in his location and the traffic stop, Torres performs his usual safety scan. No other vehicles in sight, good lighting despite the fog, security cameras from the nearby bank providing additional coverage. He adjusts his body camera, checks his equipment belt, and takes a deep breath. What starts as a routine traffic stop on this foggy night will soon become one of the most memorable moments of his career, though not for any reason he could possibly imagine. Ms. Amara Jackson sits perfectly still in her Audi's leather seat, watching the police lights flash in her rearview mirror. Her fingers trace the small velvet box in her pocket, a gift from her previous precinct in Chicago, a golden captain's badge that she'll wear tomorrow morning. 20 years of law enforcement experience has taught her to stay calm in moments like these. She had just left a 4-hour confidential meeting with the police commissioner and mayor about her new role. Her mind still buzzes with plans for departmental reforms, budget allocations, and staffing changes. The manila folder on her passenger seat contains sensitive documents about her upcoming position, information that won't become public until tomorrow's official announcement. The sound of boots on wet pavement draws closer. Ms. Jackson reaches for her purse, movements deliberate and measured. Her mother's voice echoes in her memory. Twice as good for half the credit. She's lived by those words throughout her career, from beat cop to detective to captain. Officer Torres appears at her window, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness with unnecessary intensity. Ms. Jackson squints against the glare but maintains her composed expression. She notices his stance, slightly aggressive, hand casually resting near his utility belt. She recognizes the posture. She'd corrected similar behavior in countless rookie officers over the years. License and registration, Torres demands, his tone clipped. Mind explaining why you're circling around closed businesses at this hour? Ms. Jackson reaches slowly for her documents. Of course, officer. I'm actually new to this area and was familiarizing myself with the layout. Her voice carries the quiet authority of someone used to commanding rooms full of seasoned officers. Torres's flashlight beam sweeps across her tailored blazer, pearl necklace, and the designer purse on her lap. His expression shifts subtly. She's seen that look before, the mental calculations of whether her apparent wealth matches his assumptions about the neighborhood. Step out of the vehicle, please, Torres instructs, his hand tightening on his flashlight. Have you had anything to drink tonight? Ms. Jackson suppresses a sigh. She considers revealing her credentials now but decides against it. Tomorrow's revelation will serve as a better teaching moment. Instead, she complies with his request, her heels clicking softly on the pavement as she emerges from the car. The fog wraps around them like a thick curtain as Torres begins his field sobriety test. Ms. Jackson follows his instructions precisely, walking the straight line with the same grace she'll use to navigate the politics of her new position. Her mind drifts to the changes she plans to implement. Improved training programs, community outreach initiatives, and yes, better protocols for traffic stops. Follow the light with your eyes, Torres instructs, moving his flashlight slowly from side to side. Ms. Jackson complies, noting how his surprise grows with each test she passes perfectly. She catches a glimpse of his name tag in the light. Tomorrow, she'll review his file, understand his background, find the best way to turn this moment into an opportunity for growth. The situation would be almost amusing if it weren't so familiar. In her purse lies not only her driver's license, but also her distinguished law enforcement ID, multiple commendations, and a letter of recommendation from the Chicago Police Commissioner. But for now, she remains silent, knowing that sometimes the best lessons come from experience rather than explanation. As Torres runs her license through the system, Ms. Jackson mentally revises her planned speech for tomorrow's precinct meeting. This encounter will add an unexpected but powerful dimension to her message about assumptions, respect, and the importance of approaching every situation with an open mind. Ms. Jackson watches Officer Torres return to his patrol car, his silhouette disappearing into the fog. Her hand rests on the steering wheel, wedding ring glinting under the streetlights, a reminder of her late husband, Marcus, who'd encouraged her to pursue that first promotion to sergeant 15 years ago. "You're meant for greater things," he'd always said. The radio in Torres' patrol car crackles with static as he runs her information. Ms. Jackson allows herself a small smile, knowing the system will show an impressive but incomplete record. Her recent appointment as captain is still confidential, sealed in the manila envelope beside her. The same envelope contains her vision for the precinct, plans shaped by 20 years of watching good officers struggle with their own biases and others excel beyond expectations. Her thoughts drift to her early days in Chicago, patrolling the South Side where she grew up. She learned valuable lessons there, like the time she'd stopped a silver Mercedes only to discover the driver was her former high school principal. That encounter had taught her about assumptions and their costly price in trust building. Through her window, she observes Torres' body language as he reads his computer screen. His shoulders tense slightly. He's probably seen her credentials now. 15 years with Chicago PD, 5 in Los Angeles, multiple commendations for bravery, a perfect service record. She remembers earning each of those accolades, fighting twice as hard for recognition that others seemed to receive naturally. The cold night air seeps through her slightly opened window. Miss Jackson adjusts her blazer, purchased specially for tomorrow's ceremony. Beneath it, she carries the same type of badge she's worn for 2 decades, though tomorrow it will bear different insignia. Her fingertips brush against the velvet box in her pocket again, feeling the weight of responsibility it represents. Officer Torres emerges from his car, his stride less confident now. Ms. Jackson prepares herself for the awkward apology she knows is coming. She's seen this transformation countless times, the shift from suspicion to embarrassment when assumptions crumble. But her mind is already moving forward, analyzing how to use this moment constructively. "Ma'am, I apologize for the delay," Torres begins, handing back her license. "I see you're law enforcement as well." His voice carries a hint of uncertainty, trying to reconcile her presence with his earlier assumptions. Ms. Jackson accepts her documents with grace. "Thank you, Officer Torres," she replies, using his name deliberately. "I appreciate your diligence in keeping our streets safe." She means it sincerely. Attention to detail is a valuable trait in an officer when paired with proper judgment. As she starts her car, she considers tomorrow's meeting. These late-night hours before major life changes always feel surreal, filled with possibility. She'll wear her new captain's bars, stand before officers like Torres, and begin the challenging work of transforming a precinct. This traffic stop has given her unexpected insight into exactly where that work needs to begin. The fog has thickened during their encounter, turning streetlights into distant, glowing orbs. Ms. Jackson checks her watch, nearly 1 in the morning. In just a few hours, she'll walk into that precinct and surprise everyone, especially Officer Torres. But her goal isn't to embarrass him. Instead, she sees an opportunity to demonstrate the kind of leadership that turns uncomfortable moments into valuable lessons. She signals her turn, pulling away from the curb with the same confidence that earned her this promotion. In her rearview mirror, Torres's patrol car grows smaller, its lights no longer flashing. Tomorrow, those lights will technically be under her command. Tonight, they remind her of every step in her journey, from rookie cop to detective to sergeant, and now to captain. Each rank earned through perseverance, each lesson learned shaping her into the leader she's become. The precinct buzzes with morning energy as Officer Torres adjusts his collar in the break room mirror. Steam rises from his fresh coffee, much better than last night's stale brew. His partner, Officer Kim Nguyen, leans against the counter, scrolling through her phone while they wait for the meeting to begin. "Heard anything about the new captain?" Nguyen asks, reaching for a donut from the pink box someone brought in. The morning sun streams through the windows, catching dust motes in its golden beams. Torres shakes his head, his mind still lingering on last night's traffic stop. Something about that encounter keeps nagging at him. Officers filter into the briefing room, claiming their usual spots. Sergeant Miller stands at the front, organizing papers with unusual precision. There's an air of anticipation. New leadership always brings change, and change makes everyone nervous. Torres spots Officer Chen, giving him a questioning look. His unease must be showing. "Hey, you okay?" Nguyen whispers as they take their seats. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Torres forces a smile, unable to shake the feeling that he's missing something important. The traffic stop report sits half-finished on his desk, the details of last night's encounter still unclear in his mind. The room falls silent as Chief Roberts enters, his presence commanding immediate attention. Behind him, Sergeant Miller straightens his posture, and several high-ranking officers Torres recognizes from headquarters file in. The atmosphere shifts from casual to formal in seconds. "Good morning, officers," Chief Roberts begins, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Today marks a significant milestone for our precinct. Our new captain brings 20 years of distinguished service, innovative leadership approaches, and a proven track record of building stronger bonds between law enforcement and the community." Torres reaches for his water bottle, his throat suddenly dry. Through the windows, he can see clouds gathering, reminiscent of last night's fog. The chief continues speaking, but Torres' attention drifts to movement at the door. Time seems to slow as a familiar figure enters the room. The same elegant blazer, the same pearl necklace, but now adorned with captain's bars that catch the morning light. Ms. Jackson, now Captain Jackson, walks to the front of the room with measured steps, her presence transforming the space. Torres feels the blood drain from his face. His water bottle slips slightly in his grip, creating a soft thud as it hits the desk. Nguyen glances at him curiously, then back at their new captain, unaware of the connection. Around him, other officers sit straighter, clearly impressed by Captain Jackson's professional demeanor. "Thank you, Chief Roberts." Captain Jackson begins, her voice carrying the same quiet authority it held during last night's traffic stop. Her eyes sweep the room, pausing briefly, very briefly, on Torres. He sees recognition in that glance, but also something else. Not anger or triumph, but a calm assurance that makes his embarrassment even more acute. The next few minutes pass in a blur. Captain Jackson outlines her vision for the precinct, her words clear and compelling. Torres tries to focus, to take notes like his colleagues, but his mind keeps replaying every moment of last night's encounter. Each question he asked, each assumption he made, now feels like evidence of his own prejudices. Yet Captain Jackson's presentation never hints at their previous meeting. She speaks of teamwork, excellence, and the importance of seeing beyond first impressions. When she mentions learning from experience, her gaze again finds Torres, this time with a subtle nod that only he would understand. As the meeting concludes, Torres remains in his seat while others stand to applaud. Nguyen nudges him, and he mechanically joins the applause, his mind already racing ahead to the conversation he knows must come. Captain Jackson accepts the chief's congratulations with grace, but Torres notices she's positioned herself near the door, where officers will need to pass her as they leave. Where he will need to pass her. Captain Jackson stands at the podium, her new badge catching the morning light. The briefing room remains silent, every officer's attention focused on their new leader. She opens a leather portfolio, her movements unhurried and deliberate, commanding respect without demanding it. Before we discuss procedures and protocols, she begins, her voice warm but authoritative. "Let me share a story from my rookie days." She describes her first undercover operation in Chicago, a high-stakes mission that tested not only her skills, but her ability to see beyond appearances. The room leans forward collectively, drawn in by her narrative. Officer Torres sits in his middle row seat, his notebook untouched. His partner, Nguyen, scribbles notes enthusiastically, occasionally nodding at Captain Jackson's points about modernizing their approach to patrol work. The captain outlines her innovations in Los Angeles, reducing response times by 15%, implementing new training programs, creating specialized units that bridged gaps between officers and local businesses. Success in law enforcement, Captain Jackson continues, pulling up a presentation slide, requires more than quick reactions. It demands quick thinking. Her eyes meet Torres's briefly, the memory of last night's encounter hanging silently between them. He notices her presentation includes statistics about traffic stops and their impact on trust building. The atmosphere in the room shifts as she shares body camera footage from her time in Chicago. The video shows her talking down an armed teenager, her voice steady as she connects with him through shared experiences of growing up in the same neighborhood. The situation ends not with force, but with understanding. Several veteran officers exchange impressed glances. "Technology has changed our work," she gestures to the smart boards recently installed in the briefing room. "But human connection remains our most powerful tool." Her presentation transitions to graphs showing crime reduction rates in areas where her programs were implemented. The numbers tell a compelling story of success through innovation. Officer Chen raises his hand, asking about budget constraints. Captain Jackson responds with detailed knowledge of their precinct's financial situation, revealing her thorough preparation. She outlines practical solutions, including partnerships with local businesses and grant opportunities she's already identified. As she moves through her points about departmental changes, Torres notices subtle differences in her approach. Unlike previous captains who simply announced new policies, she explains the reasoning behind each decision. Her style invites collaboration while maintaining clear authority. The morning sun now fills the room completely, and Captain Jackson moves away from the podium, choosing to walk among the officers as she speaks. Her pearl necklace, the same one from last night, gleams as she describes her vision for their future. Each step she takes appears calculated to reduce the distance between leadership and officers. We'll be implementing new training modules next week, she announces, stopping near Torres' row. These sessions will focus on enhanced observation skills, situation assessment, and trust building. Her meaning isn't lost on him, but her tone carries no hint of retribution. Officers begin asking more questions, their initial reserve melting away. Captain Jackson handles each query with insight born from experience, occasionally sharing relevant anecdotes that demonstrate her hands-on understanding of patrol work. She's not just an administrator, she's a cop who's worked her way up through every rank. As the meeting draws to a close, she reveals one final initiative, a mentorship program pairing senior officers with rookies. Experience, she says, making eye contact with various officers around the room is valuable only when we learn from it. The statement carries special weight for Torres, who finds himself nodding unconsciously. The session ends with spontaneous applause, genuine this time rather than merely polite. Captain Jackson accepts it with grace, but quickly turns the attention to their upcoming shifts and assignments. Her final words, "My door is always open," sound sincere rather than cliché, leaving the officers with a sense of both opportunity and responsibility. The afternoon sun casts long shadows through the blinds of Captain Jackson's new office. She's already made the space her own, family photos on the desk, degrees on the walls, and a small plant by the window that her daughter insisted would brighten up any room. A gentle knock on the doorframe draws her attention from the personnel files spread across her desk. Officer Torres stands in the doorway, his posture a mixture of professional composure and visible unease. "You wanted to see me, Captain." His voice carries a slight tremor, though he's clearly trying to maintain his dignity. Captain Jackson gestures to the chair across from her desk, taking note of how he unconsciously adjusts his badge before sitting. "Coffee," she offers, indicating the expensive machine on the credenza, another welcome gift from her Chicago team. Torres nods gratefully, and she prepares 2 cups with practiced efficiency. The familiar ritual gives her time to choose her words carefully. "Your file makes for interesting reading, Officer Torres," she begins, sliding his coffee across the desk. 5 years on the force, numerous commendations for bravery, excellent arrest record. She pauses, allowing the praise to settle, and not a single complaint about bias or excessive force. Torres's hands tighten around the coffee cup. "Captain, about last night," he starts, but she raises her hand gently, stopping him mid-sentence. "Let me tell you about my first traffic stop as a rookie," she says, leaning back in her chair. 1998, south side of Chicago. I pulled over an expensive car in a high-crime area. The driver was a renowned surgeon, heading home from an emergency surgery. She watches recognition dawn in Torres's eyes. Captain Jackson stands, moving to the window. Below, patrol cars come and go in the afternoon light. That surgeon became my mentor's wife 2 years later. She never forgot how I treated her, with suspicion first, respect second. Neither did I. Turning back to Torres, she sees him struggling with his thoughts. "I'm not here to punish you, Officer Torres. If I wrote up every officer who'd ever made assumptions during a traffic stop, we'd have no department left." Her smile holds understanding rather than accusation. She returns to her desk, opening a folder. "Instead, I have an opportunity for you. We're starting a new initiative with local businesses, building bridges, creating relationships. I want you to lead it." Torres looks up sharply, surprise replacing his anxiety. "Me? But after what happened?" "Precisely because of what happened," Captain Jackson replies. "The best teachers are often those who've learned the hardest lessons themselves." She slides a proposal across the desk. Plans for meetings with business owners, training sessions, trust-building exercises. Standing by her bookshelf, She picks up a framed photo of her academy graduation. You know what my instructor told me that day? The badge doesn't make you better than anyone. It makes you responsible to everyone. She places the photo on her desk where Torres can see it. I'm not interested in creating perfect officers, Torres. That's impossible. I want officers who can learn, grow, and teach others from their experiences. She watches him study the proposal, seeing the same dedication she'd noticed in his file. Torres finally looks up, his expression changed. Thank you, Captain. I won't let you down. The words carry the weight of both apology and promise. Captain Jackson nods, satisfied. I know you won't. Now tell me your thoughts on these business districts we'll be working with. I have a feeling you know these streets better than these maps show. As Torres begins sharing his knowledge, his tension gradually eases. The late afternoon sun warms the office, and their conversation flows into a productive discussion about community needs and police responses. Neither mentions the previous night directly again, but its lesson shapes every word they exchange. 2 weeks into his new assignment, Officer Torres stands before the East Side Business Association, his badge catching the morning light streaming through the coffee shop's windows. The owners of 20 local businesses sit before him, their expressions ranging from skeptical to curious. He takes a deep breath, remembering Captain Jackson's advice. Share your truth, and they'll share theirs. 6 months ago, he begins, I would have driven past this coffee shop at night and seen only potential problems. He gestures to Ming Chen, the elderly owner who now smiles knowingly. I wouldn't have known that Mr. Chen stays late preparing for the next day's rush, or that he provides free coffee to overnight hospital staff. The audience shifts, surprise replacing skepticism. Torres moves through the room the way Captain Jackson did during that first meeting. He's learned that movement creates connection, that physical presence can bridge emotional distances. Sergeant Isabella Rodriguez stands quietly in the back, nodding her approval at his technique. Our new initiative isn't about policing, Torres continues, pulling up a presentation on his tablet. It's about partnership. He displays crime statistics that show how business owner cooperation has already reduced incidents in other districts. But more importantly, he shares stories, the kind Captain Jackson taught him matter more than numbers. He tells them about Sarah Kim's bakery and how her security cameras helped locate a missing child last week, about Marcus Johnson's auto shop providing emergency repairs for a stranded family, about connections that make a neighborhood stronger. With each story, he sees recognition in their eyes. They're no longer just business owners, and he's no longer just a cop. During the coffee break, Torres chats with Mrs. Patel, who runs the pharmacy on Maple Avenue. She tells him about her concerns regarding late-night security, and he finds himself truly listening, not just waiting to offer solutions. He thinks about how different this conversation feels from that traffic stop with Captain Jackson. Back at the station that afternoon, Torres reviews the meeting notes with Sergeant Rodriguez. You're getting it, she says, highlighting key points in his report. Notice how Mr. Chen offered his parking lot for the youth basketball program. That wouldn't have happened 3 weeks ago. Torres nods, remembering the tense relationships that existed before Captain Jackson's arrival. Her influence has rippled through the department, changing not just policies but perspectives. He sees it in how Officer Nguyen now handles domestic calls, in how Rookie Officer Martinez approaches traffic stops. Later, preparing for his evening patrol, Torres catches his reflection in the locker room mirror. Same uniform, same badge, but something's different. Captain Jackson passes by, pausing briefly. Progress report on my desk tomorrow, she asks, though they both know it's more statement than question. Yes, Captain, he responds, then adds, the business association wants to know if you'll attend next month's meeting. He sees her slight smile. She's been waiting for this invitation, knowing it needed to come from them rather than her. As Torres drives through his patrol route that evening, he notices details he once missed. The teenagers who used to scatter at his approach now wave casually. Store owners to step outside to exchange ratings. Even the streets feel different, though he knows they're the same ones he's patrolled for years. His radio crackles with a call about suspicious activity behind the shopping plaza. As he responds, Torres realizes he's approaching the exact spot where Captain Jackson pulled him over, metaphorically speaking, and changed his perspective. The similarities aren't lost on him as he parks his patrol car, ready to handle whatever situation awaits with new understanding. Dispatch, this is Officer Torres. He speaks into his radio, his voice carrying the confidence of lessons learned. I'm on scene and making contact. The night stretches before him, full of possibilities for building trust rather than enforcing authority. 3 months after that fateful traffic stop, Officer Torres idles at the same intersection where his encounter with Captain Jackson began. The autumn fog has given way to winter clarity, and the shopping plaza's holiday lights twinkle in the distance. His dashboard clock reads 11:47 p.m. when he notices a silver Mercedes making an unusual turn behind the closed stores. His instincts kick in, but they're different now. Instead of immediate suspicion, he remembers Mr. Chen's late-night baking schedule, Dr. Patel's emergency pharmacy runs, and dozens of other legitimate reasons people might be here after hours. Still, it's his job to check, so he follows the vehicle with his lights off, observing. The Mercedes parks near the back entrance of the medical center. Torres watches as a woman in scrubs emerges, clearly exhausted after what must have been a long shift. He recognizes her from the community meetings, Dr. Maria Ramirez, the new night shift supervisor. He pulls up slowly, parking at a respectful distance. His high beams stay off, and he steps out of his patrol car with a friendly wave. Evening, Dr. Ramirez, everything okay? His voice carries genuine concern rather than authority. Dr. Ramirez smiles, recognizing him from last week's safety workshop. Officer Torres, yes, just finished a double shift. My car's been making strange noises, so I'm being extra cautious. She gestures to the Mercedes, worry lines creasing her forehead. Torres thinks for a moment, then reaches for his phone. You know, Marcus Johnson's auto shop provides emergency service for medical staff, part of our new community partnership program. He sends her the contact information, watching relief replace anxiety on her face. Back in his patrol car, Torres begins his nightly report. Captain Jackson has transformed their paperwork process too. Now they document positive community interactions alongside standard incident reports. He's halfway through when his radio crackles with a potential disturbance call at the train station. As he responds to the call, Torres reflects on how different things feel now. The same streets, the same badge, but his approach has evolved. Captain Jackson's influence has spread beyond their precinct, with other departments requesting information about their community engagement programs. At the train station, he finds a group of teenagers, their basketball rolling onto the tracks. Instead of immediately asserting authority, he helps them retrieve it safely, then tells them about the new youth league playing in Mr. Chen's converted parking lot. First game's tomorrow night, he mentions casually. Captain Jackson's bringing coffee and donuts. Later that night, during shift change, Torres passes Captain Jackson in the hallway. She's reviewing reports with Sergeant Rodriguez, but she pauses to ask about Dr. Ramirez. Word travels fast in their connected community now. Marcus already called, Torres reports. He's fixing her car first thing tomorrow. Captain Jackson nods, satisfaction evident in her expression. You know, Torres, she says, sometimes the best police work happens when we prevent problems instead of just responding to them. The words echo their first private conversation, but now he truly understands their meaning. As his shift ends, Torres drives past the spot where everything changed 3 months ago. The precinct's statistics show improvement. Lower crime rates, increased cooperation, better response times, but the real changes don't fit into spreadsheets. The trust in people's eyes, the open doors that were once closed, the conversations that replace confrontations. His replacement, Officer Martinez, is a rookie fresh from the academy. During their shift overlap, Torres shares not just notes about the patrol route, but insights about the community they serve. Remember, he says, echoing Captain Jackson's wisdom, every interaction is an opportunity to build trust. The morning sun breaks through as Torres heads home, his patrol car casting a long shadow. In his rearview mirror, He catches a glimpse of the precinct building where a simple traffic stop transformed into something much more meaningful. The badge on his chest feels different now, not a symbol of authority, but a reminder of responsibility to the community he's grown to truly know and serve.